It is official. Military bases across the country are to be closed down. It continues. The standoff in Yugoslavia as rebelling Slovenia defies military threats. And it works. We visit an American company which knows how to compete and prosper. Give the workers more authority.
This is NBC Nightly News, reported by Garrick Utley.
Good evening. There are days on which the news shows with particular clarity just how our world is changing, and this is one of them. We begin tonight with the military. The Cold War is over, defense spending is being cut, and today it was announced which bases across this country are to be closed down. A special commission has handed down its verdict, a fateful one for dozens of communities which have come to depend on big military spending. Some famous names in military annals, Fort Ord, Fort Benjamin Harrison, will now become history. Henry Champ has details.
The hardest decision was the closing down of the Philadelphia shipyard. The city had fought hard to save 35,000 jobs, but current contracts will keep the yard open only until mid-1996. Much luckier was the Long Beach shipyard, where commissioners supported a Pentagon request to keep that yard alive. With tens of thousands of jobs at stake, potential base closings in virtually every sector of the country, the commissioners admitted to enormous pressure.
Our job has been anything but easy.
The commission did prove lenient. The only live training chemical facility at Fort McClellan, Alabama, was kept open. The commission uncertain it could be easily relocated. Fort Dix in New Jersey, principally realigned to reserve training, but not completely closed down. The word in California was not as good.
And it is the premier training for a light infantry division in the world.
Fort Ord has more than 16,000 military and civilian workers. Its forces go to Washington State. And the Army Depot at Sacramento also closed. Massachusetts says it loses 9,000 jobs with the closing of Fort Devens, also gone Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana. Added to today's list are already announced airbase closures. Acre in Arkansas, Grissom in Indiana, Richards-Gebaur in Missouri, Rickenbacker in Ohio, Wurtsmith in Michigan, Williams in Arizona, and Lowry in Colorado. Texans are still waiting to learn if their fight to save Carswell and Bergstrom air bases will succeed. And will this locally made commercial convince the commission to save Whidbey Island Naval Station in Washington State?
This is definitely not a base ready to be abandoned.
Local residents say closure will cut 80% of that region's revenue.
The commission was unexpectedly lenient, keeping open naval training centers in Orlando and San Diego, a Marine recruit depot in San Diego, and the controversial Staten Island, New York home port. These were all facilities the Pentagon had recommended for closure. Garrick?
Henry, there was an interesting quote today from David Stockman, who you'll recall was Ronald Reagan's budget chief during the big military buildup of the early 80s. He said, quote, "There was a race on in the 80s between the United States and the Soviet Union to see which country would go bankrupt first, and the Soviets won by a hair." That's his quote. So what has happened?